Now, an aquarium does need an amount of love, and generally when we service aquarium, it tends to be once a month. And during that month, I can make you a little video, tell you what is going on. But what happens in between that month is really what's the most important thing. So during that month, it's going to need topping up. Now, it's really important that it's topped up using RO water, not using tap water. So you need to do that and keep the level right in the sump. We're also going to need the pre-filter replaced on a semi-regular basis. If you let the pre-filter get very bad, we are not going to get the same results. And then obviously the fish need to be fed and the supplements need to go in. For things like this, the supplements are not very important. But then if we started getting adventurous and we started getting more stony corals and so forth, the supplements will become very important. So you can get something like a dosing pump, and the dosing pump can do the supplements for you. You can get something like a top-up system that can do the top-ups for you. And you can get an auto feeder, which can do the feeding for you. These sorts of things allow you to go away, and they also allow you to oversee your aquarium as opposed to having to work in the aquarium and work on it instead of in it. Now, the other thing to be aware of is LED lights. I'm just trying to see if I can notice what these are. They look like possibly little radions. I can't see properly. So anyway, I'm sure they're very good LED lights. So the other thing to be aware of with LED lights is they're constantly getting better. So if they're a very old light unit, then you can bet that the new ones are so much better. Now, just be aware with these sorts of weirs, every now and then you want to get the siphon pipe down there and suck out all the crap at the bottom, because you can be surprised how much waste builds up in these sorts of weirs. Even just every now and then pulling the balls out, giving it a good siphon. Now, when you're doing water changes, the things that you want to be looking for is your nitrate and phosphate level. If they're coming up, you want to be doing more water changes, but you also want to look at your gravel clean. So if you look at the amount of waste that I'm pulling out here, it's very, very high. So there's a lot of dirt here, and that's where we can reach it. So this tank is going to be interesting because a lot of the substrate we can't even reach. So every now and then, giving the tank a bit of a spring clean is ideal. So when I say a spring clean, what we're actually doing is pulling the rocks out, cleaning underneath it, because the amount of waste that we're pulling out of the aquarium is significant. And what we want to be doing is pulling this dirty water out. We do not want to be pulling just clean water out of the top, or it's basically a waste of time. If we want to get value for our water change, we do it through the gravel and we pull out the really dirty water and replace it with good water. Now, I also highly recommend that you consider cleanup crew. So things like strom shells and sand sifting stars are wonderful for getting in your sand and helping to keep it clean. There are various fish that'll do a great job, but the fish don't tend to last forever because they need to make sure there's enough nutrients in the sand, which may or may not happen. Then things like abalone, atrocus shells, turbo snails, and other things to help with cleanup crew is a really good idea. And changing to probiotic foods will help to keep your tank much cleaner. Because of probiotic food, you'll be amazed how much cleaner your sand and your filters stay. Now, every single pump is going to have an impeller inside it. So giving the impeller a clean on a semi-regular basis is really important to make sure the pump's performance stays up. And over time, those impellers do need replacing. So in a job like this, where you've got a certain pump here that may be quite old, cleaning the impeller is a little bit of a suicide mission, because if it hasn't been cleaned for a while, it's not uncommon that cleaning it results in a brittle impeller or impeller shaft snapping. And the issue with that is replacing the actual impeller or impeller shaft, particularly on an older pump, can be very challenging. So if you're not prepared and you clean these pumps and you do end up snapping it, you get yourself in a little bit of trouble. So let's see how we go. Now, I just successfully cleaned that impeller. There was also a sponge in this pump that I gave a clean. Now, it wasn't actually that bad, but mind you, the flow coming out now is really good. So I think that's helped a lot, but yeah, it actually wasn't that bad. Now, if you are using chemical medias, just be aware of the expiry date, because you put these in there, they do their job until they become full and they either need recharging or replacing. No point leaving them in there if they're expended, especially your carbon products, because they can actually release what they've collected back into the water again. If you ever get salt creep in your aquarium and you get white stuff build up and it's really annoying you, if you just paint it with citric acid and leave it here for a while, and then just try and scrape it off if necessary. Paint it with citric acid again, and then you'll find that you get the glass nice and clean again. Now with your filter, it is really important you understand your on-off levels. So at the moment the aquarium is on, which means the level down here is down. But then when you turn it off, water from here is going to go down to there. So you need to know how much displacement there is. So I'm going to drop the water a little bit now, because I'm assuming that that's the on-off level, because I can see a line there. So that's probably the case. Now back to the skimmer again. This skimmer is never going to work properly because the skimmer is not in a set water level, because as the water level goes down, the skimmer will skim less. As you fill it up, the skimmer will skim more, and the water will constantly evaporate, and you want to top that up using RO water. So therefore your skimmer will never be set properly because the design is no good. You either need a good auto top up, keep topping it up to the same level so you can set your skimmer properly, or you want to set the sump in a design where the skimmer is in a constant water level. This is never going to be effective. I'd also look at putting an end cap on this, otherwise when you pick it up you can make a mess. And then when you're running the skimmer, what you're trying to do is get the white froth here in the cup. The yellow froth I want to come out. Now, as I said, if you go for several days and you don't clean it, when I say clean it, I don't mean take it out, I just mean grab a little device and wipe out the inside. If you do that a couple of times a week, your skimmer will work effectively, because after several days, the fatty acids and bacteria will form and break the absorbate back down. So this skimmer will never run effectively if not cleaned. Cleaned as in wiped out the inside a couple of times a week. What's already come out, you just get rid of that as you see it building up. Cleaning the inside is the important thing. But once again, I will set this skimmer now, but that water will quickly evaporate and the skimmer will stop functioning. So this is a very faulty design. Now, if you did want this pipe cleaned properly, I would consider unscrewing it and then making up a little container of citric acid, and then just leave that in the citric acid until this breaks down, or you could look at just replacing that pipe. It's not important at all because you can't see it, but obviously getting a brush like this, you clean it a little bit, but obviously there's a lot of mold through here which isn't ideal, but any ventilating these sorts of cupboards are really a preference for future reference. Now I've put plenty of polyfilter in this weir, and I put enough in there just in case a fish did flip over, I want him to be able to at least flip out. Now I also added a few algons. So I put some polyfilter, then I put some algon, then I put some polyfilter, and I would request that in a few weeks time, let's say 2 weeks time, pull the polyfilter out, replace the algon, and then put the polyfilter back in again. After the polyfilter turns black, then it does need removing. And polyfilter really is the choice for this sort of filter, because the polyfilter will cling particles, not trap them. So the chance of this banking up and overflowing is much less with polyfilter. In the meantime, you can see the skimmer is starting to do a very, very good job. Now I'm just going to test the off level by turning off the pump to make sure that I don't have too much water in there, which I sort of feel like I do. Okay, so I just had the siphon ready and I just did a bit of a test, which means I've got the pump off. It's been off for a while and there's no longer water moving through each one of the pipes, which means I'm pretty safe to turn it back on again. But for future reference, that line, that looks like a very good place to have an on level. And the on level means you don't want to fill the sump up more than the on level if the sump is on.